Right, let's dive straight in. Today, we're unpacking a really chilling true crime explainer. We're looking at deep systemic flaws and the desperate need for legislative reform in Pakistan. It's intense, I know. We're going to explore how one of the absolute darkest chapters in the country's history acted as a massive wake-up call, pulling back the curtain on these critical enforcement failures and actually driving the push for modern child protection laws. It's definitely a heavy topic, but, understanding how these systems completely broke down is really the only way we can figure out how to build them back up. I want you to listen to this horrific confession. I have killed 100 bigger children and put their bodies in a container. I hate this world, I am not ashamed of my action, and I am ready to die. Just let that sink in for a second. This instantly drops us right into the gravity of the Javed Iqbal case. We're talking about 100 vulnerable runaway boys who were strangled, dismembered, and dissolved in vats of acid. It's a statement that literally shocked the nation to its core, and it forced society to confront an unimaginable evil that was operating right in its own backyard. So we start with this grim number, 100. 100 children lost in Lahore in 1999 alone. These were mostly orphans, runaways just trying to survive on the streets, lured in with simple promises of food and shelter. But what's absolutely crucial to understand here is that this number, as horrifying as it is, was really just the tip of a much, much darker iceberg when it comes to child safety. Now, the contrast here is what's truly staggering. If we jump from 1999 to 2023, we're suddenly looking at 4,213 reported child abuse cases across Pakistan. 4,000! That right there proves the vulnerabilities exposed by Javed Iqbal weren't just some crazy historical anomaly. This is a massive, ongoing crisis. The exact same systems that failed those 100 boys back then, they're still struggling to protect thousands of kids today. Section 1. Exposing systemic enforcement failures. Let's get into it. The crucial takeaway here isn't just the crimes themselves, it's the monumental law enforcement failures that basically gave him a free pass. I mean, how does a serial killer operate on such a massive scale without anyone noticing? Just look at this timeline of incompetence. It is wild. From June to November 1999, Iqbal murdered 100 boys, completely under the police's radar. He literally had to mail his own confession letter to the police and a local newspaper in December just to get their attention. And even then, during what became the biggest manhunt in Pakistan's history, the police still couldn't catch him. On December 30th, Iqbal casually strolled into a newspaper office to surrender. Why? Because he was terrified the police would kill him extrajudicially. He completely bypassed law enforcement. Now, contrast that absolute incompetence with this chilling fact. Iqbal kept meticulous records of his victims. He kept their clothes, their photos. He even noted the exact disposal costs. He calculated it at exactly 120 rupees per child to dissolve them in acid. Meanwhile, the actual authorities, they had practically zero data collection, no effective missing persons reports, nobody connecting the dots. It honestly blows your mind that the killer was infinitely more organized than the system designed to stop him. As the Dawn newspaper put it back in 1999, this was a gothic horror story. 100 children could disappear without the authorities being aware. And we have to ask why. Well, systemic poverty, deep-rooted corruption, and frankly, parents being terrified to even engage with the police created this massive culture of silence. Think about it. When families are too scared to report a missing street kid to the authorities, it essentially hands those kids over to predators with absolutely zero risk of getting caught. Moving on to Section 2, the tip of the iceberg. If 100 children could vanish into thin air back then, we really have to look beneath the surface at the systemic abuse still thriving in the shadows today. Looking at the modern scale of the problem in 2022, the breakdown of reported abuse cases is just terrifying. We're talking 1,656 kidnappings, 537 cases of sodomy, 422 rapes, and hundreds of gang-related abuses. These numbers are alarming enough, right? But the main thing you should take away from this is that researchers tell us this data, it's only a tiny fraction of the actual reality. So we have to confront the dark reality of underreporting. Research from UNICEF and NGOs like Sahil proves that cultural stigma and family silence keep the true numbers buried, especially when the abuse happens right at home. We also see these massive institutional cover-ups. Take the horrific abuse cases within educational institutions in Khairpur, for example, where trusted authority figures completely betrayed vulnerable kids. And you know what the crazy part is? Just like in 1999, there is still a widespread lack of official, centralized data collection. Which brings us to Section 3, International Law and Legal Gaps. So how does the law actually respond to this level of systemic failure? The climax of the Javed Iqbal trial perfectly captures the legal friction in Pakistan. The judge actually invokes Sharia law concepts of an eye for an eye and ordered Iqbal to be strangled in a public square, cut into exactly 100 pieces, and dissolved in acid. No way, right? Well, this clashed directly with the Interior Minister, who stepped in and said, look, as a signatory to international human rights commissions, Pakistan simply cannot carry out a punishment like that. It was a really stark moment, showing a legal system desperately wrestling with how to process this unprecedented horror. Institutions like the Sindh Judicial Academy are constantly trying to reconcile these horrific, emotionally charged crimes with national penal codes, Islamic law, and international human rights standards all at once. It's a hugely complex balancing act. And here's the bottom line. When the laws aren't specific enough, predators simply slip right through the cracks. Speaking of those international standards, Pakistan is a totally committed signatory to the Child Rights Convention, or the CRC. Under Article 19, the state is mandated to protect children from physical and mental violence. Article 34 explicitly demands protection from all forms of sexual exploitation. Basically, this fundamentally obligates the state to safeguard a child's rights no matter what, whether they're a wealthy student or a runaway beggar on the streets of Lahore. The standard is set. And to be fair, we have seen progress on paper. Back in 2016, the Pakistan Penal Code was amended. Sections 377A and 377B were enacted to officially define and criminalize sexual abuse against minors. A step in the right direction, for sure. But when we compare the law to reality, we see a massive enforcement gap. The laws are there, sure, but if the police aren't actually trained to handle them, or if society is just too scared to report the crimes in the first place, that legal protection just evaporates on the ground. Okay, Section 4, the path to legislative reform. Recognizing these catastrophic legal and enforcement failures has finally sparked some real momentum for tangible change. Just recently, in 2023, both the Supreme Court of Pakistan and the Lahore High Court explicitly emphasized the absolute necessity for new, specific laws. The courts themselves are openly acknowledging that acts of molestation and exploitation are still falling through these legal loopholes. So the judiciary is essentially demanding that the legislative branch step up and modernize the framework. So what does this reform actually look like in practice? The justice system is basically calling for a four-step structured approach. First, enact highly specific child molestation laws so there's absolutely zero ambiguity in court. Second, establish coordinated, rapid response agencies. Third, mandate child protection training directly into police academies. And fourth, and this is a big one, foster community awareness so parents actually know their rights and how to protect their kids. And the good news is we're actually starting to see these steps take shape. Take ZARA, for example, the Zainab Alert Response and Recovery Agency, which was established in 2020. This is a direct legislative answer to the very police enforcement failures and lack of rapid response that allowed Javed Iqbal's crimes to go completely unchecked for 6 months. The whole goal here is to ensure that when a child goes missing today, multiple agencies coordinate instantly. But as we wrap up this explainer, we really need to understand that laws alone are never enough. Combating abuse requires a truly holistic approach. NGOs, civil society, and governmental organizations literally have to pool their resources. Because think about it, you can write the best laws in the world, but if you don't tackle the root causes, like crushing poverty, illiteracy, and that suffocating social stigma around even discussing abuse, the cycle is just going to continue. Which leaves us with this final, thought-provoking question. The legal landscape in Pakistan is absolutely evolving. The courts are demanding change, and these rapid response agencies are being built from the ground up. But is society truly ready to break the silence? I mean, can legislative reform ever fully succeed without a fundamental shift in cultural awareness and the courage to finally speak the unspeakable? It's a tough question, but it demands an answer if the children of tomorrow are going to be kept safe. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the systems around you.